Hi church. I just wanted to share an encouragement with you today. I've been thinking a lot recently about the verse in Proverbs 18 verse 10, which is, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe." And so when Si brought that word on behalf of Katie on Sunday, I kind of felt probably now is the time to bring that word. And actually the picture that Katie had, if you weren't with us Sunday or hadn't caught up on Sunday service, then the picture Katie had was that God is a shield, that he is fighting battles essentially for us, that actually he is a shield held out in front of his people towards the rising and fast flowing waters, and actually he protects his people from what was coming. That actually many of us feel weak through frailty or illness, but actually we feel unable to protect ourselves, but God is protecting us through those things, that we can cry out to him, that he will be a shield and that he is with us through those things. And actually I had a really similar word that I wanted to share about God being, in Katie's instance, it's a shield. Me, it was a strong tower, about being a fortress where we can find safety and refuge, and what that looks like through trials especially. I know many people are struggling with various different trials, and actually some of you might just be completely fed up with the trial of lockdown, the daily grind of getting your kids up and dressed when actually they've got nowhere to go and no excuse to do that. It might be something far more difficult. You might be struggling with your mental health, you might be struggling with your physical health or finances, whatever that is. But actually the truth that through the battle, God is our strong tower, and God is our safe place and our refuge and our fortress, and what that looks like. And I felt like he would want me to share a story of a particularly difficult situation that we faced, or particularly that I faced in the last couple of years. Many of you will know that Chris and I have got 4 children. Our youngest 2 are twin boys, and they're just over 2 now, and they were born 7 weeks early. They spent 3 weeks over Christmas in special care in 2 separate hospitals. Actually Simeon had some conditions and some difficulties with his kidneys, and God completely miraculously healed those, which is a story for another day, and I would love to tell you if you want to listen to how God healed our lovely son. But I wanted to talk about a time where about a month after they'd come out of hospital and we were just settling into normal life, about our other son Luke, who decided one Sunday morning to stop breathing at church, as you do, and for a number of days we didn't know quite why that was. So Luke stopped breathing. He was surrounded by healthcare professionals, thankfully, so I very numbly took him to Duncan and said, "I don't think my baby's breathing." He kind of came back round, and the ambulance were happy enough and they wanted to take him in for a check over. They just thought it might be reflux or something, and things suddenly became a lot more serious. He had another episode where he stopped breathing in the ambulance, and again when we were in resus in A&E, he stopped breathing for a few minutes, and so the crash team, I'm not a doctor, all come rushing in, and I was taken out of the room and asked to wait in the relatives room for 15 minutes ish, that felt like 15 hours, to find out what had happened to my son. By the time they came back in, they explained because he wasn't breathing and they were having such trouble, they decided to sedate him and put him on a ventilator. And he was being transferred up to the paediatric intensive care unit in the Evelina in London, and that was where Luke spent the following 8 days, and spent 6 days on a ventilator. And for me, I went up with him. Chris stayed behind with the other 3 children. For me, I just felt such a mixture of emotions. I felt really isolated from my family and from my children. I'd left behind one of my 7-week-old babies, so I felt real guilt that I'd left him behind, and I just felt obviously completely hopeless. For a few days they didn't quite know what was wrong with Luke. They didn't know why he wasn't able to breathe or showing any signs of consistently breathing. They knew his hemoglobin levels were dropping really low and just kept dropping. because he wasn't getting enough oxygen around his body. So as a premature baby, his response just to stop breathing. They didn't know any of these things, and for a few days they were quite honest. They didn't know why he was so poorly. They couldn't guarantee that he would get better, and they were really worried about having him on a ventilator for any length of time. And so watching your newborn baby that you've only just had out of special care for a few weeks, not being able to touch them and not being able to hold them is really difficult. So I felt a lot of pain. I was grieving and mourning the time I kind of felt that we should have had with a newborn baby, and I was doing that all on my own in a strange city, and I felt obviously really vulnerable, and really struggled in that time. And actually I as painful as it is to reminisce back on still, one thing that really surprised me was the sense of peace that I knew during that time. I would still weep, I would still be completely helpless, but actually what I did know was a real sense of peace. And I think for me that was knowing that God was my fortress, and I really understood more of being secure and safe in that refuge that God had for me. We don't really have much need for fortresses in our country anymore. We don't have need for strong towers. We are not in the middle of a war zone in our country, which is obviously something to be incredibly grateful for. But the purpose of a fortress was that it was impenetrable, that it was to keep people safe, that it was to keep the enemy out, to keep the fighting out, to keep people inside. And actually the people inside often would have been the vulnerable people, the women and the children that wouldn't have been out in the battle, wouldn't have been fighting. And actually when you are vulnerable, the safest place to put yourself is inside God's presence and is inside of God's promises. In Psalm 73, it's on my Bible, I've been so encouraged by these words. It says, nevertheless, this is Psalm 73, starting at 23 to 28. Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You hold my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For behold, those who are far away from you shall perish. You put to end to everyone who is unfaithful to you. But for me it is good to be near God. I have made the Lord my refuge, that I may tell of all your works. For me it is good to be near God. Actually, when we put ourselves in God's presence, it does us good. And actually God protects us. It doesn't stop the battle. The battle still rages on. But actually God takes the brunt of that. And actually the word that I felt God would encourage people with today is that he let him take the brunt of that. Actually, when you're in a fortress and you're in that safe place, the battle still rages on, but actually it's the fortress and it's the outside that takes the brunt of that battle. It's not you. God doesn't promise to take away the pain or the grief that we feel, or the anxiety that we feel, or the concern that we have, but actually what we can do is we can know that God can take the brunt of it, that his power is far greater than the power that we might try and exert on our own, that actually we will take refuge from something. If it's not God, we'll take refuge from something else, and that might be, for some people, alcohol, it might be our family, it might be finances. Certainly for me in London, I noticed when I was away, it was a control thing. If I could just know and understand exactly what the doctors were talking about and be there for every handover of staff and hear what they were saying, that I could understand, that somehow maybe I would be able to make Luke better. And actually that's ridiculous. He was relying on a machine and the wisdom of nurses and doctors that are trained for years and years and years to keep him safe, and obviously ultimately God, but actually we can't be our own refuge, and when we try we are completely exhausted, and when we put our refuge and our trust into other things we can feel completely failed, because they will fail us. But actually God is a strong tower. Throughout the Psalms it talks about God being our protector and our refuge, And actually, what I felt God would remind you of today just is that He is strong enough, that when we look at the person of Jesus, we can see the power that He has. Jesus was there at creation, that He was with God at the time that the earth was created, that the same Holy Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead dwells in our hearts today, and He dwells with us, and He gives us strength and power. That the power that Jesus has, it triumphs death, it triumphs he raised Lazarus from the dead, He healed people, that He brought freedom to captives. That's the same power that is at work in our lives today. It was at work in the life of Jesus when He walked this earth. And actually that's the power that will carry us through trials and battles, that we can allow ourselves to be in a safe place. We can allow ourselves to take refuge in God, because He is the strong tower. His strength doesn't fail, it doesn't grow weary, and actually through even the most difficult of times, we can rest and take refuge, bizarrely enough, in God, knowing that He is going to that we can weather that storm, that He is going to take the brunt of that battle, take the brunt of the things that we're facing, that we don't have to carry that burden, that we can give it to Him and know that He is enough for us, and that He is all powerful, and that He will do good for us. So I just want to pray to finish. God, I thank You so much that You are our strong tower. I thank You that we can know safety in a life with You, Jesus, that we can know security in our life with You, that our life isn't dependent on our circumstances or even our emotions, that pain or whatever we might feel, God, that our standing is in one of safety. It's resting in the shadow of Your wings. It's not in how we can fix our own problems. It's knowing that You will go before us, and that You are fighting our battles for us, God. We just thank You for the truth that You are powerful, that we are not, that You are strong and that we are not, that we are weak, and that actually we can find strength through You and through You, what You achieved on the cross for each one of us. God, for people that are really struggling today, would You help them to know You as their strong tower? Would You help them just to rest and take refuge and be safe in the knowledge that You are for them, God, that You are fighting for them, God, that You are their strong tower, that You will not be moved, and that we don't have to fear because of that. Amen. Have a great week.